There we are. Hey, my people. What's up? It's Gavin Syme here, coming to you live from the plateaus of central Mako. And it's been a rainy afternoon. It's the rainy season up on the plateaus here. And when it rains, it pours. The really cool thing is that most of the day it's really nice. And then if in the evenings, the rain will come. Andrew, Troy, Mark, everybody popping in there. Joe Blow. So yeah, it's just rained here. Fitzcam, Flathead. Hey guys, shout out to all of the auditors out in Texas. As far as I know, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I think all those guys are out of jail, but some of them are still facing these psychotic fake charges. If you don't know what happened on that, watch the video I did over the weekend after we finish this video. Hey everybody, I see you in there. So yeah, I mean, totally. In the evenings, it kind of rains. I'm not a huge fan of rain, but I know rain is good. And boy, it rains, right? It all comes at once. It condenses it all for the day, and then brings it home. All right, so Bao was arrested again today. Good Lord, it never ends. I'm telling you what, guys, no one to get out. The USA is going down. I will follow up on that, but just crazy. So, okay, let's just go sit down here, talk a little bit about some things. I haven't done a video in a while. Yeah, I got lights. I'm kind of going crazy. There's light and there's light and there's light because you know how I always complain about the light being crappy. Well, I'm like, no, we're not doing that anymore. We're not doing that. I'm a professional. All right? So there. All right, so I just got some food. I'm actually going to wait, but this is what I got. The cook just finished dinner right as I was about to go live. This looks like potatoes with like cilantro. This is some kind of a chicken casserole that looks like those will pair good together. I think this is some kind of an apple and nut casserole. I usually don't know what Sarita is going to make, but it's generally really good. You know, I've been dealing with some garbage today, just trying to get basic things down. And I gotta say, because I get a lot of questions. I have no idea why that light just went off. You gotta be kidding me. Hang on. Yeah, figures. You're kidding me, people. So I actually planned everything really well here, except one thing. And that one thing is checking the batteries on my light. So I'm going to rearrange things a little bit here. And I'm gonna have to get by with 2 lights for now, but we'll manage, right? We'll manage. Okay, so one of the things that is kind of annoying is getting anything done in Mako that is corporate bureaucracy related. And let me give you guys a few tips on this because I know more and more people that are like, well, I want to get to Mako, right? And what can I do? Well, getting here is pretty easy. They're generally very welcoming. The immigration policies, the border is pretty much open, although you are supposed to get a visa. But like getting in, thanks White Mage, shout out. Getting into Mako is very simple. But it's the little things that you try to do. So for example, I've been trying to set up a bank account in Mako because they work in pesos here, right? So I have my online business, and that's US dollars at the moment. And if you take US dollar and you go to an ATM and you pull it out, you're gonna get nailed. You're gonna get an ATM fee. Typically you get like a 3% fee. Thanks, White Mage. So you can get credit cards fairly easy, right? That are international credit cards that charge you no fees. The problem is this is a mostly cash society. So even in paying rent and things like that, generally you're doing that with cash in Mako, which means you're then going to the ATM and pulling pesos out. Well, it doesn't seem like a big deal, except for when you have a $1 ATM fee, roughly $1.50, let's say, that's a cheaper one, which is a fairly normal ATM fee, but then you combine that with your own bank hitting you a 3% conversion fee, it kind of hammers you. So, you know, you look around and it really, when you go international, makes you realize that the system of banking is designed to keep you enslaved, right? So on the one hand, I love here that it's a cash society, but on the other hand, I need to be able to move finances around to pay the bills. And so these banks are just terrible. They treat people like garbage. Everything is fake security. And I don't just mean in the US, I mean pretty much worldwide. People say, well, go to Calvin Schwab. So I go to Calvin Schwab. I set up an account. I verify everything. I go through all the process. I have the documents sent back to my US address, the debit card. It doesn't work. So I call them and they're like, oh, well, because you actually originally signed up from a Mexican IP address, you actually have to come to the United States. You have to come to the United States and show us your ID at a Calvin Schwab branch in the United States. And I'm like, are you people out of your freaking minds? Like, obviously they don't know who I am or my situation, but who would work with a company that says, oh yeah, because we want some grunt employee in our office to look at your driver's license, we want you to drive like 2,000 miles. The level of incompetence and inconsiderate customer service, and this is just a pattern, right? There is an HSBC bank account that has basically no fees. If you have the super premium version, which means you have to have like $100,000 in there. I don't have $100,000. Or you can pay $50 a month. Frankly, $50 a month is worth it to me to avoid the fees. However, I signed up for them and it's been like a month and so far nothing. And so they're all, these banks are all filled with these paranoid policies that really aren't about security and they're more about making you comply with the system. And that's what I see over and over and over again. And it's funny because the banks they're treating you like the US government does. They want you to submit. And yes, that is US dollars, $50 US for HSBC's top account if you don't have $100,000 in the account, US dollars, okay? So, you know, I'm not a big money guy. In Mexico, I do all right. I have a nice place, things like that. But it's not like I'm wealthy by any sort of an international or even a Mexican standard. I'm not in the class of the high class. But, you know, I want a deal. I do love the cash society here. So these are things. I'm trying to share this stuff with you guys, not only so if you have tips or where I can actually set up a real bank account with some competent customer service that doesn't have international fees, or heck, just a way to transfer $1,000 from a US bank account to a Mexican bank account so I can use it in a Mexican bank account down here. You can't even do that. You can't even wire money from your US bank account to a Mexican account without going through red tape and getting charged all kind of fees. The banking system wants you to be a slave. Now, I know this isn't a secret, interest and all this stuff, but the fact is this is a cash society. You're gonna need pesos, not credit cards and not Bitcoins. Don't get me wrong, I got a little crypto. I think it's cool. I think it's fascinating. I use credit cards down here when I can because I can use my international, like my Venture One card, and there's quite a few credit cards that are international that do not charge you fees, and so I use those when I can, you know, for things like Amazon and stuff like that. But Mexico is not the USA. You don't go around without cash, because if you go out without cash, guess what? You're not getting a taco. And if you're in Mexico and you're not getting a taco, there's no point in being here, all right? Well, okay, the freedom thing is substantial. Hang on, I'm adjusting lights again because I have my lighting all set up and then the stupid battery went dead on the A main over here. So that's one thing. What I'm getting at here with these thoughts for you guys is if you come to Mexico and you want to be here long term, the bureaucracy is kind of the same. People are more respectful and they don't freak out and call the cops on you and all that kind of stuff. However, dealing with bureaucracy, the corporate customer service here is probably actually even worse than it is in the United States a lot of times. You know, you go to stores. Here's a perfect example of one of my pet peeves. Koppel is a big store here. Koppel would be kind of like a Sears, I guess I would compare that to, all right? So brick and mortar stores are still very common because most stores are not online. You don't just go buy whatever you want online. Yes, they have Amazon here and that's very convenient and you can get most things, not all things. But there's still a very much, hey, let's walk down the road, okay? So here's the thing that Mexicans are teaching me. They're like, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And they don't necessarily mean that in a corrupt way. It's like, it literally, the stereotype of, oh yeah, well, let me ask my friend. And my friend's like, oh yeah, my cousin works in that industry. Let me ask my uncle and he'll ask my cousin. And then the uncle says, oh no, cousin doesn't work in that industry anymore, but we have another cousin that works in that industry, and he'll get you some info. So like, things can get done, but when you don't speak the language, it can be a little difficult. Now I'm meeting more people that speak English. I'm learning more Spanish myself. I'm starting to get my head around it, but sometimes, especially on things that involve corporate, money, security, banking, government, those kind of things, they're still BS. And if anything, the corporate service in Mexico is worse because the online presence is less, and the online presence has pushed corporations in the US to do a little better. They still suck, right? But if a company is bad enough in the US, it's going to get out on the internet. Here, that's a little less so. So for example, you go into Coppel. Coppel is run by incompetent people, but Coppel makes most of its money, okay? Coppel's industry, there's still a large industry here around microloans. So you have these stores that are actually a bank as well. It's like the company store. And they get people to go in there and somebody wants something that's $100, and rather than just pay for it, because they're catering to a large degree to poor people so they can nail them on interest and kind of make them slaves of the company store, they're like, well, hey, you can get this $50 thing for 20 payments for the next 2 years of 100 pesos, right? Or however those numbers work out. And so on the one hand, it's convenient for people and it makes things accessible. And on the other hand, it makes people beholden to them. And so service isn't their priority, because a lot of people that are going in there, they need something. So you go into a store like Coppel and it'll have 4 floors. And you'll get a shirt from one floor, and you'll get a spoon from another floor, and you'll get a blanket from another floor, and you'll go to pay, and they're like, oh no, you have to pay for this item on this floor, and you have to pay for that item on the next floor, and then the third item you have to pay for on the 4th floor. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Another thing they do, the stores here, is like, oh, I like this swimsuit. Where can my wife try it on? Oh, she can't try it on. That's unsanitary. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm not gonna buy this thing if I can't even see if it fits. Oh, I'm sorry, that's just our policy. And so there's this weird, like, maybe the Mexicans can help me with this. There's this weird culture almost where, like, interpersonal is very polite. Mom and pop shops tend to be good. But at the same time, it's like, if a company makes a rule and you're like, no, I'm not doing that, I'm not supporting your company if you are gonna screw me around like that, they're just like, whatever. And so there's, in a sense, even though generally the society is far more polite and caring, on the business sense, and particularly the corporate sense, it can be pretty hard to get competent service. For example, if I have a problem and I call Amazon Mexico, corporations don't trust their employees here. And, outsider, like, people say, well, I'm spoiled. Well, no, I'm not. I'm in business, I'm in marketing, I serve my customers, and I expect competence when I'm giving people my money. That's not being spoiled. That's expecting people to work competently, just like I do in the US. And where I see it the worst is not the mom and pop shops, because generally they're very flexible, and sometimes the closed shops suck, even the little ones, because they have this weird thing here about how they don't want you trying on like a swimsuit because that would be unsanitary. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not buying your $30 swimsuit if I can't even try it on. Not me, my wife. My wife looks hot in swimsuits, so I like to buy swimsuits, They're fun down here. Whatever. There's also a lot of swimming because it's always freaking warm. Anyways, it's all good. These are just hurdles. I'm just throwing these things out there. These are things you deal with in Mexico if you come to live in Mexico. And no, I have never, ever been to a store in the USA where you couldn't try on a swimsuit or a bra or something like that. I mean, you don't buy clothes in the USA without trying them on. If you're in a brick and mortar store, that's why you're at a brick and mortar store. And so, there's some point where it's a basic level of serving your customer, and I simply won't tolerate that level of incompetence, and I will go somewhere else. And I think that partly because of the internet, the sucky corporations in the US have had to actually raise the standard because they do catch flack from people, and people talk about and video and do all this stuff, right? And it puts pressure on them because people get annoyed. That will increase here as the internet increases and all this kind of stuff. But these aren't big deals I'm talking about today. I'm just kind of throwing out these little idiosyncrasies and problems and annoyances that I deal with in Mako, because I'm very much let's get organized, let's get things done, we got things to do. Buying insurance for a car, it took me like a month, right? Now, if you're just crossing the border and you just want visitors insurance for a short period of time, no big deal, right? They know the US market, and there's places like Sanborn's that'll cater it and just sell you a 6-month policy for 2 or 3 times the price you would normally pay. But if you want a normal insurance for a vehicle here, it's like, oh no, we won't insure, even though it's worth more, we're not going to insure it for that much because we're afraid that it might be too big of a liability for us. And so corporate stinks, as always. But what I've noticed is that the corporations, they don't trust their employees. They don't respect their employees. And so, for example, if I call Amazon here in Mako and have a problem and I get a supervisor, well, Amazon generally has a pretty good reputation, right? For a big corporation. And so in the US, if I had a problem with Amazon, I'd call them and they'd fix the problem. Even if it meant like, hey, no biggie, we'll just refund you $200, right? If I talk to a supervisor about something, because I bought quite a bit from them, all right? However, here in Mako, I call and I have a problem. And they're like, well, yeah, I'm sorry about that. The most I'm allowed to offer you is $25. And I'm like, you're the supervisor and Amazon only trusts you with $25? That's offensive. And so there's a bit of this fake security corporate mindset where these companies are coming here and they're not respecting people. They're not trusting people. And it not only offends me because it's annoying to do business, it offends me because I want to work with companies that hire good people and that trust those people and that give those people latitude to give good customer service. Because if you're a company and you hire employees that you don't have any trust in and you don't give them any latitude, your customer service is going to suck because those employees are not going to be able to take care of your customers, which means you're incompetent and you don't know how to run a business, okay? What can I say? This is business 101, customer service 101. You take care of your customers, all right? So anyways, just some things in Mako that you deal with. The bureaucracy. If you want to go into a government office to get anything done, if you're a gringo, it's like the answer is just no. And probably half the time it's because you don't speak the language. But if you want to get things done, and they'll be very nice about it, right? The government offices aren't like the USA where if you even question them, they'll freak out and call 6 cops to surround you with machine guns. They're very nice about it, but it's just, there's red tape here too if you're trying to deal with something in the bureaucracy or in the corporate bureaucracy. And so I'm just saying, if you come here, avoid that as much as possible, but you are going to need money. So one thing to think about if you are coming down here is maybe research accounts that work well internationally and set them up before you leave, because otherwise they're gonna jam you up. Research cards, for example, that don't have any fees, things like that. And so know what you're getting into, right? In my case, I had to escape the USA to avoid a concentration camp. But most people have a little more flexibility than that. And so these are some tips for you guys that you might consider. If you're coming here as a visitor, most of this stuff is not going to be a big deal for you. If you just want to come down for a couple weeks and check it out and prove to yourself that what I'm saying about this place is true. However, just throwing some stuff out there. You're going to run into lots of topes, and if you bring a trailer or if you hit them too fast, they will break things. Be aware of that. They control speed here primarily through speed bumps, topes, not through extortion rackets and speed traps. And so you don't see people getting pulled over for speeding very much. If the speed limit is 80, most people are doing 120 and passing you like you're standing still. So it's generally more like be safe, don't run anybody over, and most of the time, with the exception of maybe areas in a few corridors or around Mexico City, you don't actually see a lot of police pulling people over for much of anything most of the time. But we did see, if you guys watch my vlog, the Exile show from yesterday, you see that they are trying to kind of pick up on the parking ticket scam. Neat little story about that yesterday. And you know, speaking of that, another thing I wanted to talk about with Mexico today. In yesterday's video, I called out some cops and I said, hey, that's theft. all right, which is what you should do. And I'm lambasted with people saying, wow, Gavin, you need to keep your head down. You're in another country. You need to do what you're told. You need to not do this with your kids around. And something clicked with me, is I'm really blown away by what a bunch of cowards our society from the USA has become, okay? It really blows me away. Everybody says, what, as a man, as a human being, as someone who cares about my neighbor, why on earth should I go to another country and suddenly not speak the truth, not stand up for my neighbor, not defend justice? Why would I do that? The only reason I would do that is because I'm living in fear. Now, I understand that if you're in a new place, you don't speak the language, you be more careful, which I have been here as I try to learn how things work. But there's two things. First of all, if you're telling me, Gavin, you're a coward, you left the USA, and now you're sticking your neck out in Mexico, and you're just going to get in trouble there, you should be keeping your head down, it's actually you that's the coward. And you need to examine yourself and get over your cowardice. This is something I've noticed about people who hate it that I left the USA because they're blue ISIS and they're loyalists and they're patriots. They often come back to me and they say, well, you're a coward because you left. And what they're really saying is I'm a coward because I'm not willing to stand up. I'm not willing to resist, and I'm not willing to leave. And they're not willing to admit that to themselves, but these are people who do not have the courage to stand up, to resist, to speak out, and they know they don't have the courage. They're going to do what they're told by the goons and the thugs. And so what they do is they try to project their cowardice on other people by saying that those who actually resist are cowards. And I don't engage, these are not trolls that I have conversations with, but if somebody's saying that, never let your courage be defined by someone else's cowardice. And so the people that are calling patriots cowards because they say enough is enough, I'm getting my family out of the USA and it's fascism, they're the loyalists, they're the cowards, they're the people who absolutely do not have the courage to stand up to anything, and that's why they live as slaves and do whatever they're told. And we see that a growing theme, and we're going to see more of that as more and more real patriots say enough is enough. I will not simply go down with the ship. I'm going to defend freedom by going somewhere where I can actually have freedom. There's a third topic in this I want to close out with, though, and that's the culture of Mexico. If you've watched yesterday's vlog, you saw me challenging these cops. And I was pretty polite, and they were pretty polite to me, but I called them out on their theft because they should be. That's how you deal with things. If everybody called out the thugs would not be in power. That's how you educate. That's how you resist. But see, these people are saying all of these comments, more comments than I can count, saying, oh, Gavin, the cops are going to find you and kill you for that, right? You don't understand the country you're in. And I'm just laughing because I'm like, you guys don't understand the country you're in, and you definitely don't understand the country I'm in. It's not radical to stop and tell a cop off here. It's not radical to tell a cop to stop something. It's not radical to tell the government no. Does it mean everybody does it? No, there's people that just do what they're told here. Sure, human nature kicks in, but I see these people and they're pretending they're free. You're endangering your children down there by sticking your neck out and speaking out. You mean by telling someone they should stop robbing people? In the country that I learned about of what the USA was, that was just a basic thing. Like if you were not a complete panty waste, you called people out for abusing other people. And this is the problem. The USA has become a nation of unmitigated, unapologetic, dare I say, proud of their cowardice, while they wave a flag and tell other people who actually stand up, you should be silent. And the people that are saying we should be silent when we have the courage to stand up, what they're really doing is trying to justify their cowardice. And this is why I think people get angry about those of us who speak up. Sometimes because it offends them directly and their blue ISIS friends. But sometimes because by our voice of truth for the innocent, the weak, the fatherless, the widow, speaking out against corruption, when we have the voice of truth, we actually are shaming the people who don't have the courage. So they figure if they can get us to be silent, then they can feel better about their unwillingness to be vocal. And that's what's happening, is we're dealing with a nation of cowards and people are trying to justify their cowardice. And look, I know we all go through our struggles, but if you're dealing with cowardice and you're just afraid to speak up and stand up, you know what? Keep fighting, resist. I get my courage from God, and you may think that's silly, and that's fine, but I look to Jesus for that support. You can do it however you want, but you know what? Stand up, resist, speak out. Your words do have power, and you need to use them. And the people saying you should be silent because your words are dangerous or because your words are disruptive, they're cowards who are unwilling to use their words themselves. But another thing is that people keep projecting the USA. Oh, the cops are going to shoot you for that. People keep projecting what the police are actually like in the USA, which is the #1 terrorist organization in the continent of America. Okay, they keep projecting what U.S. cops are, and that U.S. cops will shoot you for questioning them and will arbitrarily imprison you, like we're seeing in Texas, like we saw with the Bundys, the Refuge, Jeff Winehouse, Schaefer Cox, that there is no law in the courts. But they actually have the audacity to project that and say that's what Mexico's like. But here in Mexico, police don't go around the streets shooting people. That's not tolerated. Here in Mexico, the Constitution, while the courts have many problems, the Constitution still has relevance in a courtroom here, and you can stand up and speak out about that. Here in Mexico, people actually resist, and yeah, freedom is dangerous, but slavery is worse. And so people still keep saying, Gavin, something bad's going to happen if you keep standing. And I'm like, you know what? I would rather die free and defending the truth than live as a slave. Like all the people that are constantly telling me I should live in fear and be silent and cowardly like them. That's not freedom. It's not freedom. And I really admire how bold the activists are here in Mexico. And so if you see a video and I'm questioning a cop, you need to understand that I'm not the radical here. I'm a piker compared to the Mexican activists. When I go to a stop where a cop is writing a parking ticket and gently chastise them, and we have a conversation about that, and I post it to the internet, will police ever retaliate? That's not the point. You don't live your life based on what a corrupt person may or may not do. But in reality, the police are far more respectful here. And so everything people are saying about how terrible Mexico is, how unjust, how bad the prison system, how terrible the cops, what they're actually describing, guys, is the USA. Because that's not the norm of what you see here. Are bad things happening in Mexico? Is there corruption? Is there a drug war sponsored by the USA? Are there cartels? Yeah, heck yeah, there's all those things. And most of it does go back to U.S. interference. But that doesn't mean everybody just demurely sits around and does what they're told here. And so I'm actually a very mild-mannered person when it comes to my activism, because I came from the States. And while in the States I was a bold activist for simply questioning the police, here I'm not that intense of an activist. And so understand the difference. And once you visit here, you guys come down, spend a couple weeks here this summer, have the best and cheapest vacation you've ever taken, and you'll see what I mean. The government doesn't, and the police in particular, are not allowed to behave like psychopaths here. And I think that that's a very important distinction. Everyone should be an activist for civil and human rights. And the reason people are being killed for defending freedom is because you're not all being activists as much as you should. And that's a challenge. Everybody should be picking up a camera. Everybody should be shaming Blue ISIS. Everybody should be willing to walk away, even if it means going to another country, to not walk into a gas chamber and to refuse a kangaroo court. Or doing one of those things, right? You have to determine how you want to fight. But at least fight. And so for all the people that are dropping comments saying, oh, Gavin, you really have no clue about Mexico. The police are going to bury you in the desert, Well, here things are more open. In the U.S., all these things are happening. The media just ignores them. Whereas here, when those things happen, when a political candidate is killed, there's community outrage. Police officers are arrested. People are sending me articles to show how corrupt it is because it's election season. The presidential election is actually on Sunday here. And it's a pretty hotly contested election. Dr. Red Pill, thanks. So this is a big deal here, right? And there's been challengers and independent parties and people running for offices that have been murdered and things like that. And what people don't understand is these things happen in the USA. Your media just doesn't talk about them. Whereas here, there was a mayoral candidate that was murdered in a town in, I think, Michoacan, last week. And the whole police force has been arrested for questioning because they're suspects in this guy's being murdered. See, in the States, the police murder who they want, just like they tried to murder Jeff Winehouse, and they get away with it. And if, like in the case of Jeff Winehouse, who's now sitting in a prison in Missouri, if the murder doesn't succeed, instead of the police being charged, Jeff Winehouse was charged with attempted murder, and he's sitting in a prison. If you don't know Jeff's story, just search him. Some of the videos will come up right here and show what they did to him on camera. You'll see that story. You should know about that. You should know about Schaefer Cox. You should know about all of these people filling our prisons, all right? So anyways, it is getting late here. I'm getting tired. I'm actually doing pretty good, though. I'm going to go eat some dinner, and it's just crazy when I see, it makes me sad when I see you guys in the comments buying into the propaganda. Is freedom dangerous? Yes. So is it dangerous to stand up for the truth or to speak out or defend someone being abused in Mexico? Of course it is. Is it dangerous in the U.S.? Heck yeah, even more so. It's dangerous to be a man, you guys. It's dangerous to be brave. It's dangerous to be a woman who defends your children. It's dangerous to stop thinking like a slave. And you know what? It's freaking worth it. Because it's dangerous and it wears you out, but it's worth standing for something. Because if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And when I look at the USA and its fake patriots and its fake church who say, oh, we're loving Jesus because we go have a party at church and have a rock concert every weekend. And I'm like, what are you talking about? That's not what Jesus told you to do. He told you to resist evil. He told you to speak up against the corruption. He told you to visit the prisoners. He told you to resist, and you're not doing it. And so the foundation of law is life, liberty, and property. And that comes from a heart of someone who loves their neighbor as themselves. But you need to understand that the whole world is not psychotic like the U.S. The society and the culture in Mexico is not hateful of their neighbor like the patriots of the USA are, saying that people should be arbitrarily put in prison for crossing a line in the sand. The Mexico federal criminal code is the size of a paperback, you guys. What does that tell you? Their prison population is a quarter of the USA. What does that tell you? You can count on one hand the instances you can find in Mexico of police and law enforcement shooting people on roadsides. On one hand, in a year. And in the USA, it's over 1,000. What does that tell you? You have to stop thinking like slaves. And I know a lot of you guys in here watching this now, you already know this stuff, right? But you need to spread it. You need to share it. We need to be bold as lions. Speaking of which, I can also rent a lion in Mexico, or I can just buy one as a pet, or I can get a concrete lion down the road. But I'm told that like concrete lions are kind of a cartel thing, so I'm thinking maybe a concrete donkey and a real lion. You can do that here too, because they actually have a semblance of freedom and economics. So should you be careful? Should you be wise? Yes. And people say, Gavin, you're going to get hurt if you speak the truth. Of course I'm going to get hurt if I speak the truth. I had to leave my country. I had to leave most of my family. I had to leave my home and most of my things. Of course it hurts to defend freedom. And that's what you do. And it's okay. And of course it's scary. And of course there's a risk. But would you rather sit on your couch and play video games and live as a slave? Maybe you would. But I wouldn't. Everyone's afraid. Cowardice is not being unafraid. I'm sorry, I got that backwards. Courage is not being unafraid, right? Everybody's afraid. We all have cowardice in us about something. All right? But courage is not being unafraid. It's being afraid and doing it anyhow. Look at the people who resist for freedom. Look at people like Lavoie. Look at people like Ammon Bundy, right? Look at people who stand up. Face the odds. All right? Face the odds. So those are just some thoughts. Some thoughts about goofy things you'll deal with in Mexico, some thoughts about the realities and the fears. Do I think, when everybody's always saying, oh, it's terrible, they're going to come and get you, do I ever think whoa, did I miss something? Did I miss something? Ever since I got here, I'm like, where's all the cartels trying to murder me and rob my family that everyone told about, right? Ever since I've come here, I battle the propaganda and the lies of people who have no idea what they're talking about because they're too busy worshiping the state in the USA. And so to do that, they have to justify that they're better than everyone else and that everyone else is bad. And we've proven the lies over and over again. But rest assured, if I ever show up dead in the desert somewhere, the U.S. government had something to do with it. It wasn't simply because I told a cop he shouldn't rob people with parking tickets. Because who the truth really hurts when the people start speaking it is the enemy of truth. And the number one enemy of truth, the number one terrorist nation in the world is the United States of America. Because we're no longer the USA. We're the U.S. government. And you do what the U.S. government says, or they wipe you out. And it's time for the world to stop tolerating that. And it's time for you to stop tolerating that. Okay, guys, we've covered it. We've covered it. I'm going to let you guys roll. I'm going to go eat some food, go take care of a couple things with the fam. I actually got that PS4. I told you guys I got a PS4. Oh, and you guys can find me a real sign if you're on there. Maybe play Call of Duty with me or something. You know, we can pretend to be tough, right? But I played this game Zero Dawn. Wow. I know everybody raves about that game, but if you have PS4, like Zero Dawn, unfreaking believable. Never played a game that good. That was like an open world playing kind of game. So yes, I actually relax too. It's not always warring on the computer and on the camera and on the streets. I actually do things to relax with my kids and my family. In fact, despite the fact that maybe I look tired sometime because I stayed up too late working on my computer, I actually have a lot more ability to relax down here. And the more I get settled here, the more I figure things out, the easier that gets. And so I do appreciate your prayers and your support and your Patreon supports and your super chats and your likes and your shares. And most of all, I appreciate it when you guys go out and build your voice and speak out. And somebody asked, my handle on PlayStation is Real Sign, REALSEIM. You should be able to find me there. And that's it for now. I'm hungry. I'm gonna go eat Mexican food made by my Mexican cook on a plate made in Mexico, on tile floors made in Mexico, in air made in Mexico, cleaned by rain made in Mexican skies that don't have chemtrails in them. You guys be safe. Resist blue ISIS. Know when to get out. Stand up. Love your neighbor. Peace. Shout out, everybody.